Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban by J.K. Rowling. An immersive summary. In the dead of night, beneath his threadbare blanket, Harry Potter celebrated his 13th birthday in the only way he could at number 4, Privet Drive, alone and in secret. The soft scratch of his quill against parchment as he completed his History of Magic essay was nearly deafening in the silence of his room. Moonlight spilled through the window, illuminating his textbooks and the carefully concealed magical items he kept hidden beneath the loose floorboard. The Dursleys would be horrified to discover him practicing anything related to his abnormality, but Harry had grown adept at carving out these small moments of connection to the world where he truly belonged. The days that followed dragged with the suffocating weight of summer at the Dursleys, but a new torment awaited Harry with the arrival of Aunt Marge. Vernon's sister bulldozed into their home with her malicious dog Ripper and an arsenal of cutting remarks aimed squarely at Harry. Each meal became an exercise in restraint as she picked apart his character, his parents, and his very existence. Harry clenched his jaw and counted down the days, hours, and minutes until her departure, clinging to Uncle Vernon's promise to sign his Hogsmeade permission form if he behaved. The last night Aunt Marge was there, the bad feelings finally burst out. As the adults indulged in brandy after dinner, Marge's slurred voice grew louder, her insults about Harry's parents more vicious. She called his father a lazy, unemployed drunk and his mother a bad-blooded wastrel. Something snapped inside Harry, a dam of fury bursting forth after years of containment. The room fell silent as Aunt Marge began to swell, her fingers expanding like sausages, her face stretching grotesquely as she inflated like a monstrous balloon. Buttons popped from her tweed jacket as she rose toward the ceiling, her horrified expression frozen, while the Dursleys scrambled in panic below. In the chaos that followed, Harry fled upstairs, yanking his possessions from beneath the bed and stuffing them haphazardly into his trunk. His heart hammered against his ribs, his mind racing with the consequences of his uncontrolled magic. The decree for the reasonable restriction of underage sorcery had been shattered. Expulsion from Hogwarts seemed certain. Vernon's purple face and murderous rage confirmed there was no place for Harry at Privet Drive any longer. With his trunk and Hedwig's cage clutched tightly, Harry thundered down the stairs, wand extended, daring his uncle to stop him. The cool night air hit Harry's flushed face as he stormed away from the house, his angry footsteps gradually slowing as the reality of his situation sank in. Alone on a darkened suburban street, miles from the wizarding world, with nowhere to go and the Ministry surely tracking him down, Harry felt the recklessness of his actions settle heavily upon his shoulders. He slumped against his trunk on the curb of Magnolia Crescent, the weight of his uncertain future pressing down upon him. The shadows around him seemed to deepen as he contemplated what would come next, unaware that his impulsive departure had set in motion events that would reveal dangerous secrets from his past. Harry Potter's heart thundered in his chest as he sat alone in the darkness of Magnolia Crescent, his school trunk beside him and the enormity of his actions sinking in. The quiet suburban street offered no solutions, only shadows that seemed to shift and gather around him. From the corner of his eye he caught a movement, something massive lurking between the garage and the fence of a nearby house. Harry squinted into the darkness, his hand instinctively tightening around his wand as a pair of gleaming eyes emerged from the blackness. An enormous, bear-like dog with shaggy black fur stood watching him, its gaze oddly intent and purposeful. Before Harry could process this strange encounter, a deafening bang split the night air. He stumbled backward as a violently purple triple-decker bus materialized directly in front of him, the night bus, emergency transport for stranded witches and wizards. The conductor, a pimply young man named Stan Shunpike, welcomed him aboard with casual indifference to Harry's flustered state. Giving the false name Neville Longbottom, Harry secured passage to London's leaky cauldron, trying to appear calm as the bus lurched and banged across England with impossible physics, beds sliding wildly across the floor with each sharp turn. Through Stan's newspaper, Harry first learned of Sirius Black's escape from Azkaban. a dangerous criminal whose hollowed face stared up from the front page of the Daily Prophet with haunted, sunken eyes. The night bus delivered Harry to the Leaky Cauldron where, to his shock, Minister of Magic Cornelius Fudge awaited him. Instead of the expulsion and punishment Harry expected, Fudge displayed an odd leniency, brushing aside the serious magical incident with Aunt Marge. The Ministry had deflated and modified her memory, and Harry would face no consequences for his underage magic. Bewildered by this unexpected clemency, Harry was installed in a comfortable room at the inn with instructions to remain within the safety of Diagon Alley until term began. The following 2 weeks unfolded like a dream for Harry, his first taste of independence in the wizarding world without the Dursleys' oppressive presence. He explored the shops at his leisure, completed his summer homework at outdoor tables while eating ice cream, and marvelled at the new Firebolt racing broom displayed in quality Quidditch supplies. Each day brought a new discovery as Harry wandered cobblestone streets filled with magical wares, the weight of his confrontation at Privet Drive gradually lifting from his shoulders. Even his friends Ron and Hermione arrived eventually, completing his happiness as they shopped for school supplies together. On their last evening before returning to Hogwarts, Harry's world tilted once more as he overheard a heated conversation between Ron's parents in the Leaky Cauldron. Their hushed, urgent tones carried news that froze the blood in his veins. Sirius Black had escaped Azkaban specifically to hunt down Harry Potter. The convicted murderer who had betrayed Harry's parents to Voldemort and killed 13 people with a single curse was now heading straight for Hogwarts to finish what his master had started. Mr. Weasley's warning to Harry was grave. No matter what he might hear, he must not go looking for Black. The peculiar leniency of the Ministry, the strange black dog, and Fudge's unusual behaviour suddenly took on a more ominous meaning as Harry realised he was being protected from a threat more immediate and personal than he could have imagined. The Hogwarts Express cut through the misty Scottish countryside, carrying students back to school as rain pelted against the windows. Harry, Ron, and Hermione settled into their compartment, sharing it with a shabby-looking man whose name, Professor R.J. Lupin, was etched on his battered suitcase. As they journeyed northward, the train suddenly decelerated with a violent jerk, plunging the carriages into total darkness. An unnatural cold permeated the air, freezing the windows and chilling the students to their bones. Tall, hooded figures glided through the corridors, Dementors, the guards of Azkaban, searching the train for Sirius Black. As one of these creatures entered their compartment, Harry felt a profound, soul-deep coldness unlike anything he had experienced before. The Dementor drew a long, rattling breath, seeming to suck more than air from the compartment. Harry's vision swam, his consciousness spiralling away as a woman's terrified screams echoed through his mind, his mother's final moments before her death. He collapsed onto the compartment floor, helpless against the creature's power. Professor Lupin sprang to life, conjuring a silvery substance that drove the Dementor away, but the damage was done. Harry awoke to concerned faces and the bitter taste of chocolate Lupin had given him to counteract the Dementor's effects. The welcoming feast at Hogwarts brought mixed news amid the enchanted ceiling's thunderstorm. Dumbledore announced 2 new staff appointments that sent ripples of reaction through the Great Hall. Hagrid, beaming with pride and embarrassment, would teach care of magical creatures, while Professor Lupin took the cursed defense against the dark arts position. The headmaster's more sombre announcement about Dementors patrolling the school perimeter cast a shadow over the proceedings, his typically twinkling eyes hardening as he warned students not to challenge these creatures. The following morning brought their first divination class with Professor Trelawney in her tower classroom, an attic space perfumed with cloying incense and draped in shawls. The bug-eyed professor moved dramatically among her students, making minor predictions until she reached Harry's teacup. Horror transformed her features as she identified a giant spectral dog that was the worst omen of death lurking in his tea leaves. Her dramatic pronouncement of Harry's impending doom sent shivers through the classroom, though Hermione's skepticism was evident in her narrowed eyes and thinned lips. Outside Hagrid's cabin during their first Care of Magical Creatures lesson, students gathered nervously around crates containing hippogriffs, majestic creatures with the bodies of horses and the heads and wings of eagles. Harry volunteered to approach Buckbeak, one of these proud beasts, carefully maintaining eye contact and bowing as instructed. The hippogriff returned his bow and allowed Harry to stroke its feathers, then unexpectedly permitted him to ride upon its back. Soaring above the castle grounds, Harry experienced a moment of pure freedom, the wind rushing through his hair as Buckbeak's powerful wings carried him over the lake and forest. Yet even this triumph was tinged with foreboding, as the spectral image of the black dog he'd seen on Magnolia Crescent flashed in his mind, hauntingly similar to the death omen that supposedly stalked him. Autumn sunlight glinted off Buckbeak's steely feathers as the hippogriff stood proudly before the third-year students. The success of Harry's flight had emboldened Malfoy, who swaggered forward with contempt etched across his pointed face. Ignoring Hagrid's careful instructions, Malfoy approached without proper respect, hurling insults at the creature. In a flash of talons and fury, Buckbeak reared up and slashed across Malfoy's arm. The boy collapsed to the ground, blood seeping through his robes as he wailed about his father hearing of this incident. Panic erupted among the students as Hagrid's first lesson dissolved into chaos, his enormous hands trembling as he scooped up the injured student and rushed toward the castle, leaving behind a cloud of whispers and the looming threat of consequences. The room felt uneasy, while Harry secretly heard the bad news about Sirius Black. Mr. Weasley's warning had only scratched the surface. Black hadn't merely been a Death Eater, he had been James Potter's best friend, his parents' secret keeper, the one who had betrayed them directly to Voldemort. The knowledge burned through Harry like poison, transforming his fear into a cold, seething rage. Each mention of Black's name now sent a shiver of hatred down his spine, his fingers instinctively curling into fists at his sides. At night, Harry's dreams filled with images of his parents' final moments and a shadowy figure laughing in the darkness. Winter descended upon Hogwarts, bringing with it the promise of a Hogsmeade weekend that Harry couldn't officially attend. Fred and George Weasley changed this fate with a weathered piece of parchment, the Marauder's Map. Under their guidance, Harry watched in amazement as ink spread across the formerly blank surface, revealing every corridor, classroom, and secret passage in Hogwarts, along with the location of every person within the castle walls. Following their instructions, Harry slipped through a hidden passage behind a one-eyed witch statue, emerging in Honeyduke's cellar. Snow-covered Hogsmeade greeted him with its twinkling lights and festive atmosphere, allowing him a few precious hours of normalcy with his friends among the butterbeer and enchanted sweets. The castle's Christmas decorations did little to soften the blow of discovering the deeper tragedy of Black's betrayal. In the Three Broomsticks, Harry had overheard professors discussing how Black had not only betrayed his parents, but had also murdered another friend, Peter Pettigrew, leaving nothing but a finger behind. The revelation festered in Harry's mind throughout the holiday season, darkening even the joy of receiving his magnificent Firebolt broom, a gift that Hermione suspected came from Black himself, leading to its confiscation for testing. The trio's friendship strained under the weight of Hermione's perceived betrayal, even as she buried herself in research to help Hagrid defend Buckbeak against the looming Ministry hearing. The relative peace shattered on a January night when Sir Cadogan's portrait swung open with a piercing scream echoing through Gryffindor Tower. Students tumbled from their beds to find Ron's curtains slashed, his face ashen as he described waking to see Sirius Black standing over him with a knife. The tower dissolved into chaos as professors searched every corner, finding no trace of the infamous escapee except for the validation of his impossible feat. Somehow, Black had infiltrated the supposedly impenetrable castle, slipping past Dementors and enchantments alike. The kids stayed close in the room with McGonagall watching. Everyone wondered, how did Black get inside? Why Ron's bed, not Harry's? The night's events cast a shadow over the castle, tightening security measures and heightening the atmosphere of fear that had been building since the escaped prisoner's name first appeared in the Daily Prophet. Christmas morning brought an unexpected gift for Harry Potter, a magnificent Firebolt broomstick. The gleaming handle, perfectly balanced frame, and aerodynamic design made it the most coveted racing broom in the wizarding world. Harry's heart soared at the prospect of flying it, imagining the edge it would give Gryffindor in their upcoming Quidditch matches. Yet the mysterious absence of a note left questions hanging in the air. Who had sent such an extravagant gift? The wonder quickly turned to dismay when Professor McGonagall arrived with concern etched across her stern features. With unwavering resolve she confiscated the firebolt, insisting it needed to be examined for possible jinxes or curses. The possibility that Sirius Black might have sent the broom cast a shadow over Harry's joy. Hermione's admission that she had reported the suspicious gift to McGonagall created a deep rift between the friends. Ron's fury matched Harry's disappointment, and Hermione found herself isolated, bearing the weight of their cold shoulders and hostile glares across the common room. Meanwhile, beneath the castle's ancient walls, Professor Lupin began teaching Harry the extraordinarily difficult Patronus charm. In the dim light of an empty classroom, Harry faced a boggart, Dementor, his wand trembling as he fought to summon a happy memory powerful enough to create the protective Silver Guardian. Session after session, Harry collapsed in exhaustion, the echo of his mother's final screams ringing in his ears as he struggled against the darkness. Lupin's patient guidance and chocolate offerings provided small comfort against the draining effects of these confrontations, but gradually wisps of silver began to emerge from Harry's wand, not yet a corporeal Patronus, but progress nonetheless. The worry was gone after weeks of waiting. Professor McGonagall returned the firebolt, saying it had no magic on it. The magnificent broom was back in Harry's hands, and the prospect of using it against Ravenclaw brought a surge of renewed determination to the Gryffindor team. A tentative peace seemed possible between the three friends as the firebolt's return removed one source of conflict. Yet just as the storm appeared to be clearing, catastrophe struck. Ron's desperate search of his dormitory revealed that Scabbers had vanished, with only a few drops of blood and ginger cat hairs left on his sheets. His accusation flew at Hermione and Crookshanks with renewed venom, reigniting their feud with even greater intensity and driving deeper the wedge between them. The morning of the Quidditch match against Ravenclaw dawned with electric anticipation. Harry's fingers trembled with nervous energy as he mounted his gleaming firebolt for the first time in competition, feeling the perfect balance and power humming beneath him. The crowd's collective gasp as he shot into the air confirmed what he already knew: this broom was something extraordinary. He soared above the pitch with unprecedented speed and control, weaving between Ravenclaw players who could only watch in awe as he executed maneuvers that would have been impossible on his old Nimbus. The exhilaration of flight was abruptly interrupted when three tall, hooded figures appeared at the edge of the field. Harry's stomach plummeted as the familiar cold dread of Dementors washed over him, but something was different this time. Drawing on weeks of training with Professor Lupin, Harry raised his wand with newfound determination. The memory of his father's face, of his mother's love, of belonging at Hogwarts surged through him as he bellowed, "E expecto patronum." A brilliant silver stag erupted from his wand, galloping toward the hooded figures with antlers lowered. Only after securing the golden snitch and Gryffindor's victory did Harry learn the truth. Malfoy and his cronies had disguised themselves as Dementors to sabotage him, only to flee in terror before his powerful Patronus. The jubilation of victory was short-lived. That very night the castle erupted in panic as students were roused from their beds and herded into the Great Hall. Sir Cadogan's portrait had admitted a man to Gryffindor Tower, Sirius Black himself. Ron's pale face told the story. He had awakened to Black standing over his bed, knife in hand, before the escaped prisoner fled. Security measures tightened to suffocating levels as professors patrolled corridors day and night. Filch boarded up every conceivable entrance while suits of armor were enchanted to stand guard. Students moved through the castle in nervous clusters, jumping at shadows and whispering theories about how Black had twice penetrated Hogwarts' defences. Against this backdrop of fear, Hagrid's world collapsed around him. The parchment in his massive hands trembled as he read the Ministry's decision. Buckbeak had been sentenced to execution. His great shoulders heaved with silent sobs as he explained how the Committee for the Disposal of Dangerous Creatures had been swayed by Lucius Malfoy's influence. Despite Hermione's exhaustive research and their preparation of a defense, the outcome had been predetermined by politics and prejudice. Now the magnificent hippogriff awaited his fate, tethered in Hagrid's pumpkin patch, unaware of the death sentence hanging over his proud head. The trio's own conflicts seemed suddenly trivial in the face of these developments. Harry's impressive Patronus proved his growing magical strength, yet this achievement was overshadowed by Black's renewed threat and Buckbeak's impending execution. A somber resolve settled over Harry, Ron and Hermione as spring approached Hogwarts. Though they didn't yet know it, these events were merely setting the stage for revelations that would soon overturn everything they believed about Sirius Black, Peter Pettigrew, and the betrayal that had shaped Harry's life since that fateful Halloween night in Godric's Hollow. Tension crackled through the corridors of Hogwarts as Hermione reached her breaking point. After enduring months of Malfoy's cruelty about Hagrid and Buckbeak's fate, something inside her snapped. Her poem connected with Malfoy's pale cheek with a resounding crack that echoed through the courtyard. The stunned silence that followed was broken only by Malfoy's pathetic whimper as Hermione stood over him, trembling with righteous fury, her eyes blazing with an intensity her friends had never witnessed before. Hours later, she abandoned Professor Trelawney's suffocating tower classroom mid-lesson, her footsteps thundering down the spiral staircase as she rejected the pseudoscience that insulted her logical mind, leaving behind a classroom of astonished students and a bewildered professor. The Quidditch pitch became a battlefield as Gryffindor and Slytherin faced off for the cup final. The match descended into the dirtiest game Hogwarts had seen in years. Elbows flew, brooms collided, and penalties mounted as Slytherin employed increasingly desperate tactics. Through it all, Harry circled above like a hawk, searching for the elusive golden glint that would end the brutal contest. When the moment came, time seemed to slow. The snitch hovered near the Slytherin goalposts, and both Harry and Malfoy spotted it simultaneously. Harry's Firebolt responded to his slightest touch, rocketing forward with breathtaking speed. The stands erupted as his fingers closed around the struggling snitch, the tiny wings beating against his palm in futile protest. Tears streamed down Oliver Wood's face as he hoisted the silver Quidditch cup, the culmination of years of obsessive dedication finally realized. Exam season descended upon the castle with its familiar cloud of stress and anxiety. The library remained packed until curfew each night, with students hunched over parchments and heavy tomes. Hermione's schedule defied natural law as she somehow attended multiple exams scheduled for the same time, emerging from each looking increasingly haggard, dark circles deepening beneath her eyes. Throughout this academic pressure, all three friends felt the weight of Buckbeak's approaching execution date. Each sunset brought the magnificent creature closer to his end, while they remained powerless against the machinery of magical bureaucracy, their appeals lost in a system that had already decided the hippogriff's fate. The tower room had lots of smoke when Harry finished the test. Preparing to leave, he froze at the sound of a harsh, guttural voice, unlike anything he'd heard from the professor before. Her body went rigid, eyes rolling back to show only whites as words poured forth in chilling prophecy. The Dark Lord's servant would break free that very night and return to his master, setting in motion events that would lead to Voldemort's rise. The transformation was so complete, so terrifying in its authenticity, that Harry felt ice spread through his veins. When the professor returned to herself with no memory of her words, Harry stumbled from the tower, the prophecy echoing in his mind, unaware that its fulfillment had already begun unfolding across the grounds of Hogwarts, where a rat with a missing toe scurried through the lengthening shadows toward an uncertain destiny. As twilight descended upon Hogwarts, Harry, Ron and Hermione trudged down the sloping lawns toward Hagrid's hut. Everyone felt sad. Buckbeak's time was almost up. Inside the cramped cabin, Hagrid's enormous hands trembled as he prepared tea, his eyes red-rimmed and swollen. Through the window, the executioner's axe glinted menacingly in the dying sunlight. The unexpected squirming in Ron's pocket disrupted their somber gathering. Scabbers had mysteriously reappeared after weeks of absence. Before Ron could properly secure his pet, the rat writhed with unprecedented strength. bit Ron's finger, and shot across the floor toward freedom. The chase led them away from Hagrid's hut and across the darkening grounds, past the Whomping Willow, whose branches swayed ominously in the evening breeze. A massive black dog emerged from the shadows, lunging not at Harry but at Ron, dragging him through a hidden passage beneath the ancient tree. Blood trailed in their wake as Harry and Hermione followed in desperate pursuit through the earthen tunnel that stretched toward Hogsmeade. The passage opened into the dilapidated interior of the shrieking shack, dust-covered furniture bearing deep claw marks, boarded windows filtering weak moonlight across the warped floorboards. They found Ron in an upstairs bedroom, his leg twisted at an unnatural angle, face pale with shock and pain. The revelation that followed upended everything they believed. Sirius Black materialized from the shadows, gaunt and wild-eyed, followed by Professor Lupin. Rather than the murderous confrontation Harry had prepared for, a different story unfolded, one of friendship betrayed, secret-keeping, and a truth hidden for 12 years. The rat clutched in Ron's hands became the center of everything. Black and Lupin cast a complex spell that forced Scabbers to reveal his true nature. Where the pet had been, now cowered a small, balding man with pointed features and watery eyes. Peter Pettigrew, supposedly murdered by Black years ago. Pettigrew's snivelling excuses and desperate pleas for mercy filled the room as the truth crystallized. It was Pettigrew who betrayed the Potters, framed Sirius, and lived as a rat for 12 years to escape justice. Harry's godfather had spent 12 years in Azkaban for crimes he never committed while the true criminal slept in Ron's bed. As the full moon rose outside the grimy windows, a new horror emerged. Lupin's body began to contort, his features elongating into the savage visage of a werewolf. In the chaos that followed, Sirius transforming into his dog form to protect the students, Pettigrew seizing a dropped wand. The truth of that night remained clear amidst the confusion. Harry's entire understanding of his parents' death had been upended, and the one person connected to his family he had believed a murderer now stood revealed as innocent. While Pettigrew escaped into the darkness, a far greater truth had been uncovered, one that would forever change Harry's view of his past and open unexpected possibilities for his future. As the full moon emerged from behind the clouds, Professor Lupin's body began to contort in agony, his limbs elongated unnaturally, bones cracking and reforming, while coarse hair sprouted across his skin. The transformation was horrific to witness, his face stretching into a wolf-like muzzle, his gentle eyes turning wild and feral. What stood before them now was no longer their defense against the dark arts teacher, but a fully transformed werewolf, howling at the night sky. In the ensuing chaos, Peter Pettigrew seized his moment. The man who had betrayed Harry's parents, who had hidden as Ron's pet rat for years, slipped away in his animagus form. His small rodent body scurried through the grass, disappearing into the darkness of the forbidden forest. The traitor had escaped justice once again, taking with him any hope of clearing Sirius Black's name. By the lake's edge, the night grew colder as Harry and Sirius found themselves surrounded by dozens of Dementors gliding across the water's surface. The air froze around them as the hooded figures closed in, their rattling breaths draining all happiness from the world. Sirius collapsed first, his already weakened body unable to resist the Dementor's power. Harry fought desperately, attempting to conjure a Patronus, but his efforts produced only weak silver wisps that dissipated in the freezing air. The creatures descended upon them, their scabbed hands reaching out, beginning to perform their soul-extracting kiss. Just as darkness threatened to consume Harry's consciousness, a blindingly bright Patronus charged across the lake. The powerful guardian took the form of a magnificent stag, its antlers lowered as it scattered the Dementors like smoke in the wind. The silver creature galloped in circles around Harry and Sirius, creating a protective barrier that drove away the last of the dark creatures. Harry strained to see the caster of such a powerful spell. A mysterious figure stood on the opposite shore, but his vision blurred as exhaustion overtook him. The last thing Harry registered before losing consciousness was the brilliant glow of the Patronus and the strange feeling that he somehow recognized it. As Harry and Hermione sat in the hospital wing, the gravity of their situation pressed down upon them. Sirius Black, falsely accused and now recaptured, awaited the Dementor's kiss in Professor Flitwick's office. Their protests fell on deaf ears until Dumbledore entered with a curious gleam in his eyes. Speaking in riddles, he suggested that what they needed was more time, his gaze lingering meaningfully on Hermione's time, Turner hanging beneath her robes. When the door closed behind the headmaster, Hermione pulled the small hourglass pendant from beneath her shirt. With practiced precision, she looped the golden chain around both their necks and turned the device 3 times. The hospital wing dissolved around them in a dizzying blur of colour and sound. Time rewound itself, daylight replacing darkness as they found themselves standing in the empty entrance hall 3 hours earlier than when they'd left. They raced across the grounds toward Hagrid's hut, careful to remain hidden from their past selves who were visiting the half-giant before Buckbeak's scheduled execution. Behind a cluster of trees, they watched the committee members approach with the executioner. When their past selves exited through the back door, Harry and Hermione seized their moment. Moving swiftly, they untethered the hippogriff, bowing respectfully before leading the creature into the shelter of the Forbidden Forest, moments before the executioner's axe fell harmlessly into the pumpkin patch. Hours passed as they waited, watching from hiding as the evening's events unfolded again. Professor Lupin's werewolf transformation, Pettigrew's escape, and the Dementor attack by the lake. When Harry saw his past self attempting and failing to conjure a Patronus as the soul-sucking creatures descended, a powerful realization struck him. There had been no mysterious saviour, only himself, standing on this side of the lake. With newfound confidence and understanding, Harry raised his wand and summoned the happiest memory he possessed. A brilliant silver stag erupted from his wand tip, charging across the water to scatter the Dementors and save himself and Sirius. Under the cover of darkness, they guided Buckbeak to the tower where Sirius was imprisoned. The condemned man's face transformed with disbelief and joy as his godson and Hermione appeared at his window atop the magnificent hippogriff. With the ministry executioners closing in, Sirius climbed onto Buckbeak's back with Harry's help. The creature's powerful wings extended, and with a grateful nod to the young rescuers, Sirius and Buckbeak soared into the night sky. Harry watched until they became merely a speck against the moon, his heart both heavy and light, filled with the loss of his newfound family, but buoyed by the knowledge that, for the first time, he had helped set an innocent man free. The morning after the extraordinary night of revelations and escapes dawned with a thunderous atmosphere within Hogwarts Castle. Professor Snape stalked the corridors, his face contorted with fury, black robes billowing behind him like storm clouds. His pale features twisted with loathing as he passed Harry in the hall, eyes flashing with accusation. The potions master was convinced beyond all reasoning that Harry had orchestrated Black's escape, and his hatred burned more intensely than ever before. The kids scattered. He was so angry, everyone could feel it. Word spread through the school like wildfire. Professor Lupin was a werewolf. Snape had accidentally let this information slip at breakfast, ensuring maximum damage to the defense against the dark arts teacher's reputation. By midday, trunks were being packed in Lupin's office, his resigned smile not quite reaching his tired eyes as Harry burst in, protesting the injustice. The shabby professor looked up from folding his worn robes, explaining gently that parents would not want someone of his condition teaching their children. The Marauder's map lay open on his desk, a bittersweet relic of happier days, which he returned to Harry with the same quiet dignity that had characterized his teaching. The sunlight filtering through the office windows highlighted the fresh scars on Lupin's face as he spoke of Harry's extraordinary Patronus, noting how it had taken the form of a stag prongs, a father still protecting his son. In the tranquillity of Dumbledore's office, surrounded by whirring silver instruments and under the watchful gaze of previous headmasters' portraits, Harry struggled with the bitter knowledge that Peter Pettigrew had escaped. The headmaster's blue eyes twinkled thoughtfully behind half-moon spectacles as he explained the profound magic of Harry's mercy. By sparing Pettigrew, Harry had created a life debt, a deep, ancient magic that would one day prove consequential. The weight of this revelation settled on Harry's shoulders as he considered how his impulsive act of compassion might someday alter the course of events yet to come, though the thought provided little comfort as he faced a summer return to Privet Drive without the hope of living with his godfather. As the Hogwarts Express steamed through the lush countryside, carrying students home for the summer, a tiny grey owl appeared outside their compartment window, struggling to keep pace with the train. The miniature messenger carried a letter from Sirius, confirming his safety in hiding with Buckbeak. Harry's heart lightened as he read his godfather's words, an acknowledgement of guardianship that included permission for Hogsmeade visits. The parchment felt warm in his hands, tangible proof that somewhere beyond the horizon someone who truly cared for him was watching over him. Ron promptly claimed the enthusiastic little owl as his own, a replacement for the pet he had lost to deception. As the train charged toward London, Harry clutched the letter like a talisman against the approaching summer gloom, his thoughts already turning to September when he would return to the only place that had ever truly felt like home.